Active versus passive crossovers. Oh boy, there's a hot topic for you. This comes from Travis in Pendley. And I'm not sure where Pendley is, but I'm not even sure what country it's in. But anyway, that's where Travis is from. I've been watching your video series about speakers and the new AN3. Thank you for watching. It's really exciting for us to have a new speaker project. And just so you know, it's not just the AN3, AN2 and AN1. The AN3 is the first one that we have done. It's kind of the linchpin of the line. And from there, we're going to do 3 models below that in cost and in size, and then 2 models above that. So the AN and a Sprout bookshelf. So there'll be total 7 speaker pairs in the eventual line. Anyway, enough rambling. With the sophistication of the equipment you make, would you ever consider using active crossovers instead of passive, providing an amplifier for each driver or group of drivers? It seems like the sound could be more fine-tuned with that strategy. I'd imagine that's been done on the woofer and mid-bass coupler anyway, yes. What are your feelings about going fully active versus passive? Travis, I am conflicted about that. Because as an engineer, and in my heart, I want to go active. Active allows me the ultimate control. I can make a power amplifier, a servo system, a crossover, absolutely specific to a driver. So we're using, in the AN series, for example, we're using a planar ribbon that is made by Bollinger Grabner called the Neo 10, and it's a beautiful driver. And it's about 10 inches tall. Well, that's probably why they call it the Neo 10. But anyway, it's a 10-inch tall mid-range driver, and we take it down to about 350 hertz, and we take it up to 4 kilohertz or so. So it covers a fairly broad range. Now that driver has certain limitations, like any driver. It can go so loud before it starts to get out of its linear range, and it can play so soft before you can't hear it, etc. It also, even though it's a fairly easy load, and planars and ribbons typically are, it's almost a crime to put a network in front of it. So in this particular one, being a mid-range driver, we're going to put a low-pass and a high-pass filter. So the low-pass, well, let's talk about the high-pass filter because it's a mid-range. Because, you know, in a mid-range, what you want to do, you've got to cut the bottom off and you've got to cut the top off, right? So in our high-pass filter, which is the bottom of the mid-range, that may sound confusing, but in the bottom of the mid-range, we want to roll off how low the mid-range goes because our mid-bass coupler is going to come up to meet it, right? And we don't want the two interfering with each other. And the challenge, of course, there is always in a crossover, mating the two, where they meet, where the transition happens. How do you hand off the duties of one driver seamlessly to the other? And that's the art of the crossover that we do a lot by ear, very much a lot by ear. And we've got all the fancy equipment and we use it, but at the end of the day, it's done in the same way these speakers were designed by Arnie Nudell. These speakers were, yes, he had all the same equipment, but he used his ears to design these crossovers, which are passive. So there's a high-pass filter, and to make a high-pass filter, we're going to have to put a capacitor in series with the driver, and that's going to roll off the bottom end of the driver. And then for the top end, the low-pass filter, I'm going to need to put a coil of wire, a big inductor, in series with that. And then if I want to have a sharp roll-off, I'm going to have another inductor and maybe another capacitor. And the network gets fairly complicated, and it gets in between the amplifier that you're going to power your system with and the driver. That said, what we've done sounds really damn good. I mean, really good. And you can hook almost any amplifier up to it and have it sound just terrific, no questions asked. But could it sound better if we were given the challenge of designing an amplifier whose synergy is specific to that driver, what do we do? Well, I mean, maybe that driver is a little this way or that way. Let's say that driver is a little sharp. It's just slightly edgy. Now we can deal with that in the crossover, or we could deal with that in the amplifier. We could build a beautiful MOSFET-based JFET input stage that would be sweet as honey to match the characteristics of that driver. Or let's say the driver was overly sweet and it needed some jazz on the top. Well, we could do the opposite and we could make a really great solid state. And it doesn't matter. The point is, we could design an amplifier specific to that driver that would be so synergistic as to never be bettered or even equaled by just hooking up one of these amplifiers in general and praying that it turns out right. So intellectually, that's what I'd like to do. Realistically, we're not going to do that. Maybe someday, but not now. Why? Because generally people want to be able to hook their own amplifiers up. So ours is a hybrid. It's a four-way system, and pretty much even the Stellar series will be hybrids. The lower speakers that we're going to build will be hybrids, in that the low end, whether it's just the subwoofer or a subwoofer and a mid-bass coupler, will be amplified internally, and the crossovers handled by us. Why? Because that's too important to give up, and there's no way that any amplifier is going to be able to give you the deep servo-controlled bass of a dedicated servo amplifier. Can't be done. We're not going to compromise. Period. So every speaker we make, with the exception of a little Sprout bookshelf, will have its own amplified low end and designed specifically for that. Where do we compromise then? Well, the mid-range and the tweeters, we're going to let you amplify it because that's what people want. And there, it's not a sonic compromise of the nature of the woofer, okay? So that's where we draw the line. By self-amplifying and servo-controlling the woofers, it's just so much better that we're unwilling to go that level of compromise. The fact is, when you hook it up to one of these BHK amps or a Stellar or anything that you hook it up to, your Macintosh, whatever you got, it's going to sound great, and we don't feel like we're compromising the sound. Could we do better with a built-in amplifier? Yes, but not to the point where you're not going to be able to get great music out of it, and that's kind of where we draw the line. Anyway, enough rambling. I hope that answers your question, and I look forward to everybody having a chance to hear our new speakers. Okay, thanks. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.